Hey guys, for today's video, we're going to be taking this naturally dark, long hair into a caramel balayage. If you want, you can follow me over on Instagram at Christy@thecottage. Here's my client's hair. I was really shocked when she came in because I had no idea that it was going to be this long. I thought it was like to her shoulders by the picture she sent me. And I just wanted to be safe for the lightening process. So we're going to be doing a strand test. And I don't like doing strand tests on somebody that the hair is actually on. So I just take my scissors like kind of underneath the hair and I just slide cut little pieces so that way it just kind of blends with their hair and it's not like chopped off on the top of their part or anything like that. And her strand test came out okay. And I just do my strand test the same way that I would do the lightning service with my same bleach and developer just to make sure that it feels okay. I let this sit for about 20 minutes. Okay, so I just did a strand test on my client's hair. Her hair is like literally down to her butt. It's very long. I think she has some layers in it. And originally she came in thinking like the service would only be like 2 to 3 hours long and like 200 to 300 max. But I told her just to get it out of the way, like, do you have a price range that you want to stay within, just because these services do, they can take a long time and cost a lot. And so that's when she told me her budget, and I was like, these services, sometimes I go by hour just because we don't know exactly like how long the service is going to take or how many bowls of bleach we'll have to use or, whatever, if we have to do Olaplex treatments and stuff. So I just told her that I go by hourly rate, which is $75 an hour. And I told her, if we end up taking like 5 or 6 hours, it's going to be just under like $500. So is that something you're comfortable with? Or do you want me to do something where we're more in her budget? And she was fine with, the price range or whatever. So right now we're going to mix for her color or for her lightening service. We are going to be doing Schwarzkopf Blonde Me with 20 volume and Olaplex. Her strand test that we just did, it turned out really okay. Her hair still feels really strong. Her hair is very dark. It's like a level 2. And I know a lot of people say that like they don't color their hair, but I just like to be sure and like double check and make sure. Like sometimes people think like, oh, there's no color in my hair or my hair is natural, they'll say. But what they mean sometimes is that they have a natural color on their hair from like 3 years ago. And so they haven't colored it since then. And so they think like it's natural. So I just like to double check to be safe because it's better to be safe than sorry. So her hair turned out fine. She did say it's virgin. So we're just going to go on with the service now since her hair pulled okay. And go from there. Another thing, because her hair is so dark, I'm only going to use 20 volume. 30 volume has a lot of power to it, but it dies off a lot faster. So I'm going to just stick with a lower developer, just 20 volume with Olaplex, because the lower volume, it will lighten just the same, just at a slower rate. So it doesn't die out as fast. That's why I always like to use a lower volume, because it will last longer and get a more even processing. It won't like all of a sudden put out all this power like the first 15 minutes or something like that. And then after 20 minutes, it kind of dies off. And then if you're still applying bleach, then that bleach you're applying at that point is going to be really weak. So that's why we're using 20 volume. And then the way that you get really good lift with extremely dark hair is really fine, thin sections. So it is very time consuming. It's a lot of work, but the lift will be really good. You'll get nice, clean lift. You won't have splotchiness or any areas where there's like dark holes in the hair or anything. So it's gonna be a very long application. She thought it was gonna take like 2 or 3 hours, and I was like, oh no, it will probably be at least this long just to put the bleach in. So you know, fine sections, thin sections, that will get you the lift that you want when you're dealing with dark hair. To start her hair, because I know that it's going to take a long time to lift, I want to start in the very back. And I'm not going to go directly up to her hairline, but I am going to do it kind of on the hairline in the back, but I'm going to back comb it so there's a little bit of a cushion. So that way, as it grows out, there's not as heavy of a grow out line. If she pulls her hair up, it's still going to be up pretty close, just not directly right on the roots. And I'll repeat this on the other side, and you can see there that I was doing like a zigzag section. That's going to help get a lot better blend, especially because we're going to back comb it too. It will just be nice and soft. So this is about all that I'm going to do just for the hairline. And then after this section, I'm going to do it like straight across the middle from between those two. And in here you can see that I'm getting pretty close. I'm just trying to feather it up to the roots. So she is going to be probably like an inch and a half away from the root area. So this is going to grow out nice and soft. And to connect these two, I'm zigzagging just right at the very base of the nape of her neck and back combing this section again. So this will create a nice transition all the way around her hairline in the back of her head. So that way if she pulls her hair up, she's going to have nice brightness all the way around the underneath. But it's going to be really soft and she won't have heavy grow out because it's back combed and not directly like 3 or 4 foils up to her hairline in the back. So we're going to do this and kind of repeat the same pattern up the back of her head. Kind of do it diagonally on one side, diagonally on the other side, and then again straight across the center to connect the two. And this is going to be just basically how I do the whole back area. And in the subsections or areas that I weave out, I'm going to go through and you'll notice as the video goes on that I'm going to do the dropouts more from the midsection through the ends. That way her hair has a nice flow from being brighter at the root area and then softly flowing to being more fully saturated and fully, I don't want to say blonde because we're not doing blonde, but if I say blonde, this is what I'm meaning, fully caramel toned through the ends. I realize that I just said brighter at the root area, and what I mean with that is that I am taking the foils all the way up to the root area, and we're just doing like a really fine weave all the way to the roots in some of her sections. So she is going to be brighter at the root area, but we're trying to make sure that we have lots of dimensions still and that she has a nice flow. So she is going to be softly brightened at the root area, and then it's going to blend nicely through the ends of her hair so that it like slowly transitions to being fully saturated and almost like an ombre, where she has a little bit of dimension, some brighter pieces up at the root area, And then the longer that her hair gets and the more that it flows down, it's going to be more solid through the ends. If I don't know if that was confusing, but hopefully that cleared up what I was trying to mean just previously. So when I started doing her hair, I asked her, does she want to be more solid blonde, again, not blonde caramel, through the ends, or does she want to have dimension and have some of her natural flow through the ends? And she said that she wanted to be almost pretty solid through the ends of the caramel tone. So I'm doing it pretty heavy through the ends. I'm saturating almost all of the ends in her hair. I am going to weave out just very fine pieces of her natural. That way she has just a teeny bit of dimension, not a whole bunch, because we do want it to have that really nice full ombre look where it does flow from darker to brighter through the ends. But sometimes I feel that if you do it 100% completely lightened through the ends, it just, I don't know, I feel like it just doesn't look as nice. So even if you just do a very fine weave of leaving just a teeny bit of that dark to leave through the ends, I feel like that just softens it up a little bit. You'll still have that brightness, but it will just look a little bit better in my opinion, because there's at least a little bit of dimension going through the ends and it's not so solid. And anyways, so that's why I am lightening through her ends pretty much 100%. But just those very, very fine weaves, I'm going to leave those out and not lighten through those sections. Okay, pay attention when I put the board up here. Look how thin that section is. You can see through her hair. That is like the kind of section that you want to have when you're trying to lift through dark hair. If you can't see through the section, it's too thick, it's going to be splotchy. You're not going to get good lift, even saturation. So if you can see through the hair, then you're going to get better lift. And it will also lift faster, and it will be able to get a little bit more heat if you do smaller sections. And just make sure that you're not doing it too thick. And it does take a lot of work to pack in that many foils and to do that many pieces, but this is one reason why you got to charge for your time. And I told her that for this service, it's not like a balayage is $200 or $250. This is going to take, like, I think it took almost like 5 or 6 hours to do this whole service. And it's just not realistic to have a base price for a service like this if you're going to say like $250 to do a balayage. You can have that as a starting point, I think, on your menu. Just make sure that clients are aware of that. But when you're doing a full service, when you're going from dark to light, or even a blonding service where your whole intention is to really go completely lighter, I think it's just easier to say, I have an hourly rate of $75 an hour. That way it includes however many extra bowls of solution we have to use, however many toners we have to use. And actually, when I did tone her hair, I had to use 2 full bottles of toner, and I've never had to use that much before. So it's just, I never would have expected to have to use that much. So again, this is why it's just nice to say $75 an hour versus like, oh, let me add up all these different things that I've had to use, probably like $100 of extra bleach. The toner probably would have equaled like $50 or $75. It's just hard to break that stuff down before you know what you're getting into. So just stick to an hourly rate when you're doing services like this, and you'll come out a lot better in the end, because the client will have a better idea, like, okay, this is, tell people it's $75 an hour. Be expecting to be here for about 4 to 5 hours or more potentially. That way they have the idea in their head already, like, okay, I know that this is going to be quite a bit, versus if you say starting at $250, but then they have $100 of extra bleach that you've used, $150 to $75 of toner that you had to use, whatever. I mean, if you tell them it starts at $250, in their head, they might think like, okay, $275 to like $300, but the reality is that you're charging almost like $400 to $450. So, and that can get tricky. Your client's going to be unhappy with you now, because now you added on like almost $150 to $200 extra to the service. So stick to an hourly rate. It will just work out better in the long run. Also, sorry that I've been rambling for so long, but this is how I mix my bleach. If you've been paying attention, I just water it down. A lot of people say that they have problem with swelling. This is how I've like prevented that from happening any longer. I just spray a little bit of water in there and mix it up and add my Olaplex, and I don't have any swelling problems anymore. Okay, now that I've rambled on for so long and we've reached the top of her head, that was like a tongue twister. So I'm kind of doing diagonal sections up the back side of her head, and then again I'll go straight across until I reach the top of her head. And I am doing it a little bit smaller subsections in between. That way we get a little bit more dimension up at the root area. So we're going to continue this until we get to the top, and then we will start working on the sides. Okay, now that we're to the sides of her head, I'm gonna go around her hairline and do a foil. She kind of wanted that like TikTok trend that's kind of going around where it's like a really thick blonde like strap right on the hairline. So I'm going to go through her hairline and I'm going to do some really fine weaves, but I am going to pack them in there quite a bit back to back. That way she gets a lot of brightness at the front of her face, but it's still going to be pretty soft just because of the fine weaves that we're doing. And I'm going to do this later on in the service versus normally I usually start this at the very beginning just because her hair is very fine around the front. And even though it is quite dark, I know that this is going to lift pretty nicely, much faster than it would in the back. And the back section I wanted to start just because the hair is a little bit darker and a little bit harder to lift. So I figured if I started in the back versus doing the foiling around the face at the very start of the service, I wanted to get that going and get that processing faster and sooner. That way it would get better lift. And I knew that doing this part of her hair wouldn't take that long. So that's why I'm now getting to this part just now in the service. Okay, now that we're at the top of her hairline along her forehead, the very first foil that I'm going to do is a weave. That way, if she pulls her hair back, it will blend nicely. She's not going to have like a straight line across as her hair grows out. It will still look really, really soft. And she'll have that dark dimension if she pulls her hair back. So as far as her money piece goes, I'm doing a lot heavier than I normally would. And make sure you talk to your client about this. Do they want their money piece to go all the way up to the top of their roots? Do they want it to be kind of like back combed and weave so that it's like kind of a little bit more rooty just at the money piece area right up at the forehead? Do they want it to be a little bit softer and kind of grown out looking? Do they want it to be extremely bold and maybe you have to do like 3 slices back to back with no subsections or weaves in between? Just even if a client shows you a picture, talk to them about it first, because even though they might like the whole appearance of something, they still might not like the idea of having an extremely harsh, solid money piece, but maybe that is what they like. So just always make sure to talk to your client about it and give them the option. That way they can see what's best for them and what they might prefer for growing out. And just always be open with your clients and give them choices. So you can see here that I'm going straight across with a slice. So this is going to give her a little bit of that boldness that she's wanting. But because we packed in a few weaves, it's still going to be soft, but she is going to have that extra brightness and a little bit thicker of a money piece. So kind of break it up with some weave, some slices. That way there's a little bit more dimension, but also that brightness that she's wanting. So where she parts her hair, I'm going to go through with a zigzag. That way it will make sure she has evenness on both sides of her hair. If she happens to part her hair a little bit over to the side of her part where it normally falls, you don't want to go straight off somebody's part and then if they flip their hair just a little bit over to the side of that part, to one side or the other, then all that brightness that you worked on is going to fall on that side. So I feel like doing a zigzag is better, because no matter where they part their hair in that like inch range, they're covered to have brightness on either side. So now that we're at the top of her head, I'm going to start here. That way this can start processing a lot faster and make sure we get this color going so that it starts matching up with the ends. So I'm going to go diagonal back off the center part of her part area, actually. And I'm going to zigzag it backwards. That way she has a lot of the brightness still kind of falling towards the front of her face, but all of the brightness is going to fall kind of underneath her hair. So we're going to go diagonally back off of her part on either side. So she is going to have a little bit of brightness peeking through where her part is, but because we're doing it diagonally back off the part, all of that brightness is going to be kind of underneath. That way she feels like as her hair grows out, she's not going to have a whole bunch of like roots or grow out and feel like she has to come back a lot sooner. So this is going to be nice for her because she's going to be able to go quite a bit of time in between without feeling like she needs to come back. So this is a great way to go ahead and give somebody a lot of brightness through the hair, but not necessarily directly right on top. Okay, so I'm just going to continue this, doing diagonal sections up the side of her head and then going through and weaving through the dropouts and painting from the midsections through the ends. That way she gets a nice flow from having softer dimension through the roots to being more solid through the ends. And once I get that, we're going to make sure that she has nice even lift. And if I have to go through and reapply bleach with like 30 volume anywhere, if it's taking a little bit longer to lift, obviously, because it has to catch up. But if there's anywhere it's like stuck in the, you know, red zone where she's not lifting past that point any longer, that's when I'm going to go through and try to relift through her hair. And don't forget that you can always blast your client with a blow dryer to kind of give it some more heat so it processes a lot faster. I never set my clients under the dryer. Even with this client having such dark hair, I would never put her under the dryer, because then I feel like I'm not in control of where the heat's going to be distributed to. So anyways, you can see here that her hair is lifting really nicely. I mean, it's kind of washed out from the lights, but she's at like a level 8, 9, which is exactly where we want her to be so that we can tone her down. And even though the roots are a little bit brighter, the ends are still getting a nice, decent lift. So we're going to wash her and do an Olaplex treatment and then work on toning. Okay, so I'm getting ready to tone my client's hair, and her blonde, it's not like blonde, but like her foliage that we just did, there were some areas where she's obviously like super blonde because it was closer up to her scalp area, directly on her hairline, like up in here is nice and bright. But there are areas through like the ends where she's a little bit brassier and maybe like a level 8, just because, you know, she doesn't have the heat from her head, so it's not going to process as light. So because she has so much warmth in her hair, just because of how dark her hair is naturally, I'm gonna use some ash tones, but because the color that she's wanting does have a little bit of a copper, like warmer tone, I'm gonna add a little bit of like a warmth in there too. And hopefully it all just like ends up blending really nicely. We are gonna do like a level 6 probably. So to mix, I'm gonna be doing like 5-1, 7-1 for the ashy tones to cool it down, and a little bit of the 6-6-8 just to add some of that warmth back in there. So I'm not gonna do too much of the warmth, probably just like less than a quarter of the formulation will be from the 6-6-8. So I'll probably do like half and half 5-1, half and half 7-1, and just, okay, you know what I mean? Like not half and half, but like, I don't even want to say a third or a quarter, but like, you guys, my math sucks. Just like give me a break, okay? But anyways, like just a little smidge of that for warmth. Okay, here's my client's before, again, super long and dark, and here's her after. I don't know if you caught the roots. Sorry, it was kind of scrolling down, but her roots are so pretty with just a little bit of soft dimension, and then it gets nice and bright through the ends with a little bit of her natural going through. It just blends so perfectly. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for taking the time to watch this full video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.